Hi everyone, I'm back with another video in my 2025 challenge where I'm trying to photograph 250 species of birds in the state of Massachusetts this year. So today is February 1st, which means that I've been doing this challenge for 1 month now. And looking back, I am reasonably happy with the progress that I've made so far. My strategy has been to look for the difficult to find winter species and try to get those on the list as much as possible. And I'm not worrying too much about finding the common year-round species. I figure those will just sort of come when I'm out in the field. So I have seen quite a few good birds, good winter birds, and I have a few more to add in this episode. So I'm generally happy with how it's going. Having said that, this is the first weekend where I'm kind of wondering what it is that I'm going to be able to find that's going to be good. Some of the rarer birds that were around that I hadn't seen yet seem to have kind of disappeared. Not too many new ones showing up. And also, it's not a good weather weekend. It's snowing and kind of windy today, and then tomorrow is supposed to be very cold, especially in the morning. So we'll see. I have come to Kings Beach, which is just north of Boston. It's kind of a busy area. You can see the traffic streaming by, but this is a beach that attracts a lot of gulls in the winter. And last week, an unusual gull was reported. So this is a common gull. That's common with a capital C. So this is a mostly European species that is kind of a vagrant into Massachusetts. Was looked for yesterday and was not found. So I'm not hugely optimistic about finding it, but I'm going to give it a try. There's a lot of gulls out there, so it's just a matter of sifting through them. So while I'm doing that, while I'm looking for this unusual gull, I'm going to take you back to a couple of short trips that I made last week to look for some birds, and then we'll come back here and we'll see how I'm doing with this gull. One of the nice things about birding is that you end up going to places that you wouldn't otherwise visit. Today, that place was the parking lot of a dollar store in Tewksbury, Massachusetts. There's a flock of gulls that likes to hang out here, and according to eBird reports, this flock has recently included a lesser black-backed gull, which is quite uncommon in Massachusetts. This location is not far from where I work, so I just popped over at lunchtime. When I arrived, the lesser black-backed gull was not there, but I did find this immature Iceland gull. Iceland gull is already on the year list as one showed up on my home patch in early January, but I'm always happy to see one. More gulls were flying in, so I just settled back to wait. Then someone came by and dumped out a bucket of some sort of food and kicked off a feeding frenzy. I guess that explains why the gulls like this spot. Shortly thereafter, I spotted this dark-mantled gull standing by itself. There are two black-backed gulls found in Massachusetts, lesser black-backed and greater black-backed, with the latter being much more common. Greater black-backed gulls are huge, much larger than herring gulls, and have a squarish head and a very large bill. This gull, on the other hand, is slightly smaller than a herring gull and has a slender build with a relatively small bill. So this is definitely the hoped-for lesser black-backed gull. A very nice bird to pick up on my lunch hour. At some point I noticed something interesting, which is that there were actually two immature Iceland gulls in the flock. These two birds here. Seems like a good year for finding them in Massachusetts. Okay, so it's fairly early on a Sunday morning, and I have come into downtown Boston to look for a cackling goose that's been reported here at Jamaica Pond off and on over the past couple of weeks. This is my second trip down here to look for it. Did not find it, obviously, on the first trip, which was in the middle of the day, and I believe that morning here is going to give me a better opportunity because the geese tend to leave during the middle of the day to go feed elsewhere. So fingers crossed, I'm going to go try to find the cackling goose among the couple hundred Canada geese that are out there on the ice. Jamaica Pond had much less open water than on my last visit, and it seemed like there were fewer geese as well. So I was a little concerned about my chances. And after looking through the geese for 20 minutes or so, I didn't see any candidates for a cackling goose, so I was definitely worried. But then the geese started to wake up and move around, and this small goose with a tiny stubby bill suddenly appeared. But before I add this cackling goose to the list, I really need to add Canada goose to the list. I've somehow neglected to do that up to now. And now we can add cackling goose to the list, because that is definitely what this is. Cackling goose is basically a western and midwestern species that's rather rare here on the East Coast. Cackling geese are much smaller than Canada geese, but since Canada geese have a lot of size variation, it can be misleading to rely just on overall size. The best field marks for cackling goose are the steep forehead and, of course, the very small bill, which you can see here in this photo. On my previous visit to Jamaica Pond, I didn't find the cackling goose, but I did see another new species for the year, which is ruddy duck. So let's add that to the list now as well. All right, as you can see, that was successful. Got the cackling goose. The light was not in the perfect direction, but I think the photos and video are pretty decent, and it's definitely fun to see that tiny stubby bill on this goose. So we've got snow goose and cackling goose, two rare gooses for Massachusetts so far this year. So we're doing pretty well on the waterfowl. Okay, coming back now to Kings Beach and my search for a rare common gull. It was snowing fairly heavily, which wasn't going to make things any easier. At one point while I was filming, I noticed something blocking part of the image, and I realized that snow was building up inside my lens hood. The tide was quite high and still rising, and the gulls were congregated around this tidal stream. The first thing that caught my eye was not a gull, but this group of greater scaup that were hanging out right at the shoreline. I added greater scaup to the year list in the previous video, but it was nice to get this close-up view. As for the gulls, the most common species was herring gull, which is almost always the case near the coast in Massachusetts. There were also several great black-backed gulls standing off by themselves. And as well, there were quite a few ring-billed gulls, and these were the ones I needed to focus on. A common gull is very similar to a ring-billed gull, with the main differences being a slightly darker mantle and a smaller bill without a distinct ring on the end of it. These differences are pretty subtle, so I needed to look at all the ring-billed gulls carefully. I did this, and unfortunately, there was no common gull. Oh well, can't win them all. So I decided to walk along the beach a ways to see what else I could find. I came across this large mixed flock of common eider and greater scaup. I counted about 70 scaup in this flock, which is a pretty good count. There were also a few white-winged scoters feeding close to shore. The males are pretty striking birds with their jet black plumage with the dramatic white spot around the eye. Then just after that, a male black scoter swam out from behind some rocks right below me. This one is on the year list based on some pretty marginal shots that I obtained in a previous video. I was happy to get this much better video because now I can add black scoter to the channel life list. Okay, well, as you saw, I was not able to find the common gull there on Kings Beach after looking through all of the other gulls. I inspected all of them closely, particularly the ring-billed gulls, which it closely resembles, and I'm pretty sure it wasn't there. The tide was quite high, and although there were some gulls there, there weren't as many as I think there sometimes are, so may just not have been there at this location right now. So I'm really hoping that bird gets reported again. I'll definitely go back and look for it again, and maybe it'll be like the Barrow's goldeneye, and I'll get it on my second or third try. Was able to film some other birds there, as you saw. I was particularly happy to see the black scoters closer up and be able to count that on my channel life list. So not a wasted trip. So after that, I came back and went to my home patch. The weather cleared up, and I was able to go on a nice walk with my dog and pick up some new birds there. So let's go through the birds that I've picked up at my home patch. We're having an unusually cold winter in Massachusetts, and Horn Pond is completely frozen over. I think this is only the second or third time that that's happened in the 15 years that I've lived in this area. So the only action here on the main pond is some ice fishing. There are still plenty of birds around on the back trails, however. I found this American goldfinch munching on some berries. That's a new one for the year list. Cardinals are abundant on my home patch right now, and the males provide a welcome bit of color in the winter. This downy woodpecker flew into a small tree right next to me, providing a really nice photo op. It's a very common species, but another new one for the year. Then I came across something a little different. This coyote hanging out right next to the path. So close, in fact, that my lens was initially zoomed in too far. Sorry about that. Then I realized that there were two coyotes. Whoops, make that 3 coyotes. Now my dog and I were outnumbered. The coyotes didn't show any aggression at all, however. In fact, they seemed very laid back and relaxed, so I didn't worry. I imagine that this is a family group, but I don't know much about the habits of coyotes. In any case, this was a neat encounter. I headed over to a small parking area where people have been leaving out seed. And as soon as I arrived, I picked up another common species that's new for the year, a blue jay. This robin hopped out for a treat as well, which is a little unusual. It's been a tough winter, and the birds may be running out of their normal food supply. Then the bird that I was really hoping to see on this visit to my home patch showed up, this fox sparrow. This is an uncommon species in Massachusetts, but Horn Pond is a great place to find them, and there are often a few that overwinter here. In any case, I'm happy to get this one out of the way early in the year. The overwintering brown thrasher also put in a brief appearance, making several other birders quite happy. This is the same bird that I've showed in a few recent videos. As I was walking out, I noticed that this coot had wandered onto land in search of seed, giving an opportunity to see its comically large feet. All right, well, that was a nice visit to my home patch. It's always nice to have a spot where you go where you always know you're going to see some birds and have something to look at. And it was nice to see that fox sparrow. That's actually not a really easy bird to get, so it's good to have that one photographed and on the list. So I'm going to wrap this video up here. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.